Okay. One minute. I just want to make sure that I'm coming through. Can someone tell me if you can hear me? Yes. Okay, good, good, good. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Nick. And we still have a few people joining. So I will give another minute or two. Hello, Deb. Welcome.
Hello, Ann.
Let's see. Yeah, I think we have just about everybody. All right, I'm going to wait about 30 more seconds and then I'm going to launch in because, again, we have plenty to cover. And the time goes quickly for me. It's 3 o'clock, so I'll just give a few more, a little while longer. There's a couple more folks. All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back. Hope everyone enjoyed the snowstorm and Martin Luther King Day yesterday, and now we're back at it. So welcome, and we're going to start in with session 3, another action-packed session, objectives and activities. And what I'd like to do is we're going to just start by, first of all, I wanted to tell people, I like seeing your faces. It makes me feel like, so if you're comfortable, I don't want to hear you. That's true, unless you're, speaking. Don't want to hear your dogs barking or the mailman coming or mail person coming up, but whatever. But if you're comfortable, I'm happy to see you. And especially in the small groups, I think if you're comfortable showing yourself to people, I think that makes a nice, just a nice atmosphere, more collegial. So I am happy to see you, and it makes me feel like I'm not just talking to myself. So thanks, but it's up to you entirely. So we are going to launch right in. What I'd like to do, we're focusing on objectives and activities today. What I'd like to do is go back and just revisit briefly the goals that we came up with last time. And I think that once again, in a very short space of time, you folks did some excellent work, and I'm really feeling very good about these goals, the 2 that we had time to see. So these are the ones that we're going to look at briefly. So let's look at them. All right. Here is the goal that you came up with in the group. For, I think that's, I hope I'm right, that's group number 3, which is the West River Trail. And then I'm going to explain, go ahead and read them both, and then I'm going to explain my suggested change. And I'd like to hear from folks in this group, to see if you agree with this. I did a couple of things. First of all, I think that I could be wrong, but I think that you don't just want to enhance visitor experience. I think you also want to increase the number of people who use this trail. Is that true, group number 3, or don't you care about increasing the number of people? Can someone speak to that from that group? Do you think that you also want to increase the use? Anybody here from the group 3 who has an idea about that?
Yes. This is Betsy. I was in the group and I agree. Yes. I know we used the word expand at one point, but.
Yeah. So I think that to me, since that's important and that's what I got from there, I would add that to your goal, that you want to increase year-round use. And I put year-round in there, which I think makes sense, and enhance visitor experience. You could do it the other way, depending upon what you want to put more emphasis on. You could say enhance visitor experience and increase year-round use. Either way, whichever one is the biggest priority for you. And I decided that it just makes it a little too clunky to say how many parking spaces. I know that we want to get kind of specific here, but I think we're going to get more specific later on and probably in the description of it. So I think it's okay just to say here, improve and expand the parking area. And it just puts too many words in to say from 6 to approximately 12. You'll talk about that soon enough. And then displaying information, we'd already changed it to that, I think. And I really like the remnants of the old rail bed, because I think that's actually what it is, if that's right. So that would be my suggestions. Any more comments on this before we go to the next one? Okay, and for this one, read the goal and then read my minor edit, which is quite small. So what I'm suggesting here is to really turn this into more active language, and it's a very simple edit. So instead of installing a chairlift, I like to always start a goal with an active verb. So we're going to install, this is our goal. Install a chairlift in the Townsend Town Hall, which is used for town and other blah, blah, blah. And then it just changes the end of the sentence to allow for full and equal access. And I want to tell you that this sentence, to me, this solution will provide equal access. Oops, I'm sorry. That's not needed here. I think that this stands alone as a really clear and strong goal. I think it really tells us what we want. I think you've done a great job. And I saw this group go from what started, it was hard. It was a little bit clunky and it was hard to put it all in one sentence. But I feel like you folks did a fantastic job and that this goal is really contained in this one sentence. How do folks feel from that group? How do folks feel about this? Anybody? Yeah, I see a thumbs up from one member. Anybody want to speak up about this?
I think it increases, this is a link, I think it increases it. And it's amazing how one word really can change kind of the feel of it.
It is incredible. And this is why I can't resist making these small edits. I didn't even look for a few days. I didn't go back until a couple of days ago. And I just look, and it's amazing how that works. And that's another reason. I mean, I don't say that you need to wait a week between, checking, but if you develop a piece, whether it be a goal, objectives, activities, and then you just sit with it for a little while, or literally leave and come back and look at it again, even the next day, I find it's amazing how you can see how just making a couple words change makes it sharper, clearer, and that shorter is often better. So I think both of, to me, I don't even, it's amazing to me, given that, and it always amazes me, given that there's only one person in each of the groups who actually knows about this project, that you have really come up with in a short time some really excellent goals that I think are ready to go. I just wanted to spend a minute and hear how others are feeling about this process, and does it feel like it's working, and that you're getting not only something for these, but that you think you'd be able to use for your own projects.
Just if I'll comment briefly. I've got a project that's popping around in my head, I almost feel bad that I wasn't able to get it in. We've got an old first aid station on public lands that is a health hazard and is $33,000 with mitigation and stuff to get rid of it. In the old days, they just would have knocked it down and burnt it.
Right.
But and so as we're going through this, I'm at least mentally.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping, is that you can all.
How I can word this, and if I can just ask a brief question. In this seminar, will you be providing possibly some resources in terms of where to find
answer is
grant
no.
opportunities? Oh,
That's
okay.
a session, and the reason that's a session I love to teach, but in working it out with Sarah, she said that that's already being offered. So make sure to check with Sarah. I
Okay,
know
great.
that they offered it last time. And so that's, yeah, I have that information and I love to share it, but apparently there's another equally talented expert who knows all about where to find grants, because I absolutely want you to know that. So that's just not on our list. Okay, anybody else before we move on? Any kind of general comments or feeling like this will apply to your own grants or what might be helpful? And then we'll move on.
Anne, did you
Yes.
have, I saw the email where you were asking for group 1 and I didn't respond because that was that piece that I missed.
Uh-huh.
When,
So I don't have that
And-
now,
and-
but what I'm hoping is that maybe somebody will plop those into the chat and then I can put them into blank boxes that I've left in this.
yeah, I really like that. If somebody from group 1
Yeah,
can do
but-
that.
Yeah, so if that happens, great. All right, moving on. We are going from goals to objectives to task and action steps. We're going to spend, I only have a limited time and I'd love to have, even many more hours, but we're going to really focus on objectives. That's more complicated. I think that most of you are pretty good. I mean, most of us are pretty good about breaking objectives down into steps and action steps. I think we almost always do that. We're almost, many of us are quite comfortable in doing that sort of thing. So I think that we've already done that in many cases. So we'll go over that, but I'm going to spend more time on the objectives, which I find take more thought and are harder to do. And that's what we're going to work together with in our small groups. So yeah, that's what we're going to spend time on today. And I'm showing these together. I always show them together because I really want everyone to understand how each feeds into the other. How, as I said, I see it as a pyramid with the one overarching goal, the 3 to 5 measurable objectives that together achieve the goal, which are really sets of interrelated strategies and actions, and then 3 to 5 tasks or action steps under each objective. An important part of this is measurable objectives. That's for 2 reasons. First of all, that's so that you can really show at the end of the project that you've done what you said you would do, and that you have actually thought through, as you develop your objectives, what it takes to actually achieve what you want to achieve. That it's in a way that you'll be able to go back and say, these are the outcomes we wanted, and this is how we know that we're, even during the project, once you get funded, that we're actually working for them, or that somehow we veered off and we're not really going to reach these measurable objectives with what we're doing. The other very, very important reason is because funders love that. Funders absolutely want to know what it is that you're going to, that they're going to get for their money, and that you can actually show them that you don't just say that things are better, nicer, healthier, stronger, but that we have thought through how we're going to actually say how things are improved. And this is a lot of thinking work. So let's go straight to some examples so we can talk about this. We're going to go back to Hope House Therapeutic Residence. Just remind yourself of the project goal quickly. And then in the objectives, we're going to talk about how the heck are we going to do this? And I'm telling you, this took a lot of thinking work, because there's a lot involved in a therapeutic safe house for 6 women experiencing domestic violence, especially when we have their children there. And when we've said that we're going to increase their sobriety and help them retain or regain custody. So what are our objectives? How are we going to do this in a measurable way? First of all, if you're starting a project, or if you're building something or making something, I always like my first objective to be the startup, so that you don't just, the funder doesn't just presume, and you don't just presume that, when the money comes, it's already there. you need to tell how you're going to build this project, make it, create it. So when we have objective 1, provide a safe, sober residence with beds for 6 women with up to 3 children each for 6 to 12 months. First of all, we're very specific there. We reminded them what exactly we're doing. And what this says to me and what's measurable here is that the funder, the committee is going to be able to look at this, at the task under this objective, and tell that we have come up with what we need for a residence. We have the space refurbished and safe for children and mothers. We have the staff we need. We have training. We have measures to, that are in place. We have a program in place. So we've recruited our staff, everything we need to basically be ready to offer this program is in that first objective. The second one, and you can see it goes right back to the goal: provide treatment and supports that contribute to ongoing sobriety, better social and emotional well-being, and improve parenting skills. We could have put 10 different things in here, and we probably brainstormed and came up with 10 different ideas. But what we want to make it measurable. We don't want to make it too complex. We wanted things that we can actually tell that at the end of the day, these are things that we've made a difference on. And most important, that these are sets of strategies that are actually going to lead us to meet our goal, which again is increase mothers' sobriety and help them retain or regain custody. So what we've decided is that the mothers need treatment and supports that contribute to sobriety, better social and emotional well-being, which clearly, most of us would agree will make them better parents and more likely to regain custody. And then we know that there's a specific set of programs and strategies that are related at helping folks parent better. So those are the 3. And so we've made it very clear. And as a funder, as the reviewer, you can look and see what it is we're going to be doing. So what is going to be, first of all, we've built this, not built, but we've done what we need to provide a safe, healthy residence with the kind of staff we need. That's what we do in number 1. Number 2, we talk about the very specific, intense sort of programming that we're going to provide. Number 3, we talked about the custody. And so we need to address that. And so we're going to have specific efforts around work to reunify mothers with their children and reduce separations and loss of custody. Then we have a really important, this is kind of an escape clause here, unless otherwise indicated. Why did we put that? Anybody have an idea why this is here?
Oh, well, this is Deb Barrier. That sounds like you don't want to defy the law, the Children and Families, Department of Children and Families.
True.
Things that are going on are court things.
You know what? These are very troubled parents. They've already been threatened with loss of custody. They already are on their own with their children, and they have serious substance abuse problems. We can't guarantee that in 100% of the cases that it's going to be the very best for these children and mothers to be reunited, at least not in the 6 months that we have them, 6 to 12 months. So we can't be judged on the fact that 100% of them are reunited. We have to put that out in there. And that took a lot of thinking and talking to realize that, yes, we want to be judged, and we want a measure to be that we are reducing separations and loss of custody. But we have to understand that if there's a case, and we hope it's very rare, when it really would be harmful, that we wouldn't have this kind of requirement that if we don't have 100%, then then we haven't met our goal. So you have to really think about that. And if there's some exception to the rule. Can you understand why we did that? So, all right. And then here's something that I really like to do when we have time limited programs, especially when we're dealing with folks who we know, and this would absolutely be true. I mean, this to me applies beautifully for the transitional housing program in Bennington as an example, is we know that we only have them for so long. It took these women, many years to get to the point where they need our services and where they're in such trouble. We can't expect that after 6 to 12 months, we can just leave them and off they go and they're great. So we decided that it was a really important piece, and every grant that I write with in social services, almost everyone has a piece with this kind of aspect, which is connect participants with aftercare services. And we don't just say aftercare services. We actually, again, are holding ourselves accountable. We're saying that support mother sobriety, custody retention, and the well-being of mothers and their children. In other words, that support the kind of work that we're doing in number 2. Now, this is limited because all we can do in a 12-month grant is connect them with those services. If this were a 3-year grant, then we could also say, not only would we connect them with these services, but we would also connect them with the services and ensure that those services are supporting the mother sobriety, custody retention, and so on. We can't, so you can see how important it is, how carefully you write this. We cannot ensure that, because guess what? We don't have any more money. If we get another grant for aftercare and, to support women beyond those 6 to 12 months, then we would surely build that in. But you have to really not tie yourself to anything that you can't be responsible for. So we are accountable for connecting the participants with the relevant services that they need. But we aren't going to say, we're not going to ensure that they stay with those services and that those services, do what we hope, because we can only do so much in that 12 months. So you can see how you have to really carefully craft your objectives. Any questions before we move to a very different type of grant, so we can see how it works in something very different? All right, moving on. Remember the Sunlight City Park Enhancement Project. First of all, this is a much smaller project, and that really comes into play when you look at your objectives. The previous project was probably, I don't know, $120,000 or $130,000 grant at least, and had a bunch of other supports. I think they already had the house, the facility. Maybe it was even 180. This one is more like $18,000. So what is it that we can do? So we're improving water quality and riparian habitat, ensuring a diverse ecosystem, clean water in our waterways and in our parks and waterways for generations to come. Let's look at our objectives. Oops, sorry about that. What are we going to do? We're going to be very specific. We're removing woody invasive plants from wetlands, stream banks, and floodplains. And what we're going to do to make this measurable is we will come up, it doesn't say it here, but if I make this kind of promise, then when I'm working with the project, I say, don't say it unless you're going to be able to prove that you've done this. So they are either going to do it by, how many pounds they remove. They may take before and after pictures. They may do it, it's not enough. It's important, but it's not enough to talk about how much time they spend doing this. But they literally have to be able to show that they have made a substantial difference, and that, however many woody invasive plants there were before, there are significantly fewer. We're going to, and same with this, plant native plants to prevent invasive species from returning. So we're not just going to plant native plants, but we're going to show that we're following the science and what the folks who know how to do this say is needed, so that we're going to be able to measure that we have done what it takes to prevent invasive species from returning. And that's part of the generations to come, so that we're building for the future. We're not just doing it for this spring. So we're going to really be showing that we're following what is recommended. And then we're going to carry out a trail maintenance construction plan to reduce sediment erosion. And while we're at it, we're going to improve the trail user experience so that people can enjoy it. And I see I have an extra space here. That's a mistake that I'll correct next time. Okay, any questions about that one? And again, this is just as with the goals, this is easier said than done. It's, this takes a lot of work and thought. And yet, I feel comfortable that you folks can do it. So what we're going to do next is I have, let's see, in the chat, do I have, unfortunately, okay, I'll tell you what I did, because I don't have the goals from 2 of the groups, but here's what I do have. I'm going to show you what's going to happen. We're going to have 30 minutes again. I'd like to put you to put yourselves in your groups. And I want you to develop 3. Well, you won't have, I want to tell you, you won't have time to develop 3 to 5. My goal is that you come up with 2, but that they're not all encompassing. I'm saying develop 3 to 5, and I'm putting it here because I just want you to keep in mind that that's what you want eventually. But you won't, I really don't think you'll have time to do that. I want you to have some time to really think these through. So think through what your first couple of objectives would be. To do that, you are going to have to spend some time talking about what this really involves. And there's a couple of ways to do this. You can, in many cases, and for many programs, it can be done, it's consecutive, like what happens in terms of time. But for some projects, you're doing several things at the same time. So it may not break down quite that easily. For both the projects that I shared with you, you start with an objective that happens first. So you remove the old, you remove the old invasive plants before you plant the new one, the new positive ones, obviously. So that's clear. In other cases, you may be doing several things at once, and you'll have to figure out how to divide it up, not necessarily by time, but by how things go together. So the way that we're going to do this is I'm sharing with you now, and I'd like somebody, if you don't have it in your group, because I didn't have the goal for group 1, I gave you the project idea, which is pretty similar to a goal, and you'll have to work with that.
So I can put in what I thought we came up with, and I just.
Okay,
put
well,
that in the chat.
maybe you could do that in the chat for your group. That would be great. For
Oh,
number
okay.
2, same thing. I don't have the goal. So again, you came up with what I thought was a very strong project description. So you can use that, or someone from the group can put the goal into chat. For number 3, you will go back and use these. I don't know, does someone I'm going to just give you a minute so you can write that down. Someone can write that down in group 3.
I've actually got it.
Okay, and then group 4, if someone has it.
I have it.
Okay, so we are going to, once again, have 30 minutes. Choose timekeeper and reporter, develop 3 to 5 clear measurable objectives. Well, again, you'll probably have time to come up with 2. Unless you decide that what you want to do, you may decide in your thinking process that rather than come up with 3 to 5 beautifully written, 2 beautifully written objectives, we want to sort of map out what our different areas are. There's a couple different, you may just decide that we really need to come up with all our objectives, and then we'll kind of make them look pretty and clear later. You'll find out as you start talking what makes sense. So once again, we will have time to work on 2 of these. And this time it'll be groups 1 and 2 because we worked on 3 and 4 last time. However, that doesn't mean that you don't want to do a great job together. So any questions before I stop sharing and move us into our, and have you move you into your groups? And again, I'll join now and then. Everybody ready? Get set. And let me just stop the, I'll pause recording. Recording.
Oh, God, I have to go to a zoning commission meeting today.
Maybe you'll be able to
Hey, at
use
least you-
this. All right, so what we're going to do now is, as before, we're going to spend about half an hour, and then we'll move to we'll spend our last half hour talking about activities and how do we build activities into our objectives. So I can tell you, as I said, this is harder than it looks, because you really are thinking through, we have this beautiful goal, we know what we want to do, and now you're thinking through, well, what comes first? And in every case, and this is exactly what I do when I'm building a grant, is in every case, we tend to get to very concrete things. What are the tasks? And in every case, I invited you to pull back a little and say, I think in every case, think about, you're talking about a task here, and well, not with all of you, but several of you. What is the broader objective that you want to accomplish to get to your goal? And then under that, you have task. And this takes a while. So I don't expect you to be there in half an hour, but I saw you make some really good progress. So Vernon, what do you think? Are you able, let's see, I need to,
Since we eliminated all the tasks parts, we wrote
Yeah.
conduct needed repairs.
oops, I want to go
Uh-oh.
back to here. Am I still sharing? Can you see me? Can you see the,
No, it bumped
Okay,
out
let
of
me-
repair. It bumped out of sharing.
okay, I didn't mean to do that. So let me go back into sharing. Can you see it now, everyone? Okay,
So
so,
yes, so I put in chat and I put just what we had,
Oh.
and then I also put the tasks we had, which you don't want anymore probably.
yeah, I don't think we'll do the test. I'll go to chat. Conduct needed repairs is the first.
Yeah, and then the rest you said were tasks, right?
Those are tasks under, so you'll want to save those, but those are tasks, yes.
Okay.
Oops, I don't know why this didn't go in. Well, I'm just going to write conduct, sorry.
And I'm
Yes,
sorry to interrupt, but you're on the Bennington County Recovery Housing, is that?
no, that's not what
Oh,
I mean.
yeah.
So again, so I stopped sharing again, huh? And I'm sharing them. Okay, let me see. Let me stop sharing, try again. That's odd. All right, let me get back on. Okay. All right. Can everybody see draft
That's-
objectives here?
For Bennington, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bennington, let me go back. Thank you. All right, let me go back to,
Yeah, will it let you back
here
up?
we are, yeah. Okay,
There you go.
objective
So-
1 is conduct needed, this is objective 1, repairs.
Right,
For
right.
what, for Pond Road Chapel. And the reason that
Right.
this made sense as an objective for you folks is that, Deb, I just want to make clear to everybody and to myself that these repairs have already been enumerated. They've already been, the folks already know what's needed, and they're not big and complicated. So you don't need to step back and do a whole planning process. Under conduct needed repairs, you can put several tasks, which is engage the contractors. and then, paint and repair, they're all kind of small, very specific things. Is that correct? So that's why
Yes.
for this project, in fact, these repairs are only going to add up for, I forgot, something like $20,000 or something. They're not major repairs, and they're simple, and they've already been decided. So that's why this is fine for the first objective. Whereas if it was a more complex construction project and the planning wasn't already done, you would probably need a first objective is to plan what's needed. Do you understand, everyone? But you're already there, which is great. And then I know you didn't get a chance to write this, but we talked about objective 2. Does someone in your group kind of have a good idea of what
I put it in chat.
I'm going to have you read it to me.
Oops. Engage community on how to utilize space, the space. That's kind of what we
How to
did
use
this-
space.
that last second. And that's all we ended up with, because the rest
Okay,
were all
I think
tasks.
that's a good start, because what you were talking about is and then there's, there may be a third, there may well be a third one, which is to start using that space. So you're conducting needed repairs on the chapel. You're engaging the community on how to use the space. And I want to tell you, this is just a start. I would probably work with that objective to make it kind of more exciting and positive. So I would have something like engage the community to on option, on the many options for bringing the community, engaged community, for the many options in bringing different populations and different populations and services and celebrations into the space. Do you see how that makes it a little more concrete and a little more kind of exciting, and tells us that kind of, what are some possibilities here? And then you had talked about that you want to have a townwide celebration, and that could be a task, or it could be as big as an objective. If you folks decide in talking this through that, really to get everybody engaged, you need to do something that, you're going to have this be, once it's done, that you need to have a major event to get people involved, that you're going to, spend money to market it, that you're going to be doing outreach to various groups. In other words, that it's going to take several tasks, that it's not just, okay, we're going to call 20 people and have a potluck. So in a case like that, it may be that objective 3, or that might be even objective 2. And then you engage them. You decide how you want to do it, but hold, plan and hold a town-wide event to basically, that might be too, I don't know. It's basically, this isn't the right words, but to get folks excited and invested, excited about
Okay,
and invested in Pond Road Chapel as a major community resource, something like that. So it may be that, that's big enough. It really depends, sometimes an event, it can be handled under one task. But if you decide that this is a big part of it and you're going to spend several $1,000s and it's going to take 3 months, then that might be an objective. Does that make sense, Deb?
Yeah, I don't want to belabor it because of shortage of time in the other groups. I just see 3 being part of 2. If we're going to engage the
And
community,
it
we're
may
going to do
be
it
part
through
of
town,
2. That's what we
partly.
talked about. So
But
maybe
that's okay. That can be.
It
Yeah.
may be part of 2. It may be the third task of part of 2, or the first task. I don't know. But yes, what you do next is when you engage community on how to use the space. Now you have a brainstorm on what are the different things that we're going to do that. And then there might be a third one. I'm just going to say, because you talked about how it's historic and it's a town landmark. there may be something that you want to do as a third objective that we didn't have time to talk about, that has to do with really embracing that history and spending some time and resources and getting people who are excited about the history to really make it come alive as a historic monument. I don't know, but that's just something that I was thinking about. Somebody else? Yes, Marty?
What about an objective around sustainability? The idea that they're doing these repairs now, but what about the need for future repairs? Don't funders usually want to see, okay, we're going to give you the money now, but how are you going to continue to maintain and sustain that building?
Yeah, I was thinking about that too, Marty. That's a really good point.
I think that's a really interesting point. And in fact, to me, you could even make it more exciting. It's not only what we need, what we need in terms of like what might become rotten or old or need to be replaced, but what might we've started with this kind of modest repair. What are some new exciting things that we might want to add? Maybe I'm making this up. Maybe we want a stage. Maybe we want a commercial kitchen in the future. So I agree. I think that's a really interesting idea, is that really thinking about, and that might be, once you've done this, once you have the community excited, maybe an objective is to then have a planning process for what happens next to sustain and use it best. I think that's very exciting. And so I'm also just to, put this down, and these are all ideas, is, we don't have time, but I'm just going to say historic and, historic resource and value, that you might want to do something about that. And it may well be that this is a task under number 2, Deb. And this is the kind of discussions you have, as you think about it. So I think that's good. All right, that's great. Any other comments, questions about this one? Ideas? When I said, when you say needed repairs, I would probably get a little more specific, but not, just so they understand that you kind of already have, so if you know that needed repairs, if you already know what they are.
It's the roof, the siding and painting and
Right,
windows.
needed repairs to roof, siding, and where's the painting going to be? Inside or outside?
No.
The siding.
No.
Oh, so it's really roof and siding. So that you can start painting the picture of what it really is. Okay. I think this is a really good start. Do you folks, does this group, do you feel like this is a good start? You're not there yet, but does it give you some good ideas to go on? So, you would next be able to come up with activities. Okay, let's go to the next one. All right. And again, this isn't the exact goal, but they did a good job. We know what they're talking about here. So what is objective? Did you folks come up with some? I mean, I know you did come up with some objectives. Who wants to tell us what they are?
Yeah, and I just dropped it into the
Oh,
chat.
okay. Let me see if I can, without putting you into something again. Aha, this is great. Okay. Here we go. Excellent. All right. See if I can copy it. Well, that's funny. It's not letting me copy. It thinks I want to paste something. What the heck? Okay, copy. All right, here we go. All right, let me get out of chat here and I'll make this bigger for everybody. Okay. Here. Let me make it bigger. It doesn't, okay. Objective 1, 2, 3. Everybody read these. I'll try to make them a little bigger if it'll let me. Maybe if I space it. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Okay. Okay, let's start with number 1. Provide 2 safe, sober residences with beds for 12 men for 6 to 12 months or longer if needed. As they said, they were able to basically take right from the one that I had, right? But this was their plan. So does this make sense to folks? And tell us, group, what kind of tasks will be under this objective? Can you give some examples?
Would a task be like rehabbing a building with plans for 2 residences?
Yeah. What else?
Engage Turning Point Center of Bennington to provide management of recovery housing program.
Great. Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know what else off the top of my head.
Yeah. So you've addressed 2 really important parts, the building and the staffing, right? And as you think through it, there may be other pieces like, making sure that you have is Turning Point going to do the entire management? Like they'll provide the meals and transportation and everything?
I don't think there's a plan for meals and transportation.
So you'll have to, so that's part of it too. Do you understand? So that basically when you say provide the safe, sober residences, you want to have tasks so that everything is there. So that you have everything that you need. And it may be, in the case that I had, they didn't have to rehab a building, they just had to rent one. It may be that rehabbing a building, that finding and rehabbing a building is big enough that that might be its own objective. If you're going to rehab a building, there's a bunch of tasks under there. So to me, that's pretty big. And I would probably have that as a separate objective. And then I would have the whole staffing and, preparing it as another objective. Does that make sense, group?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, rehabbing is a big deal. Yeah, Nick.
Just do you have the building already?
We are acquiring it. We have the building in we
In
know
contract?
which
or
building
whatever?
it will be. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so you don't have to find it, but if rehabbing is a big deal, if it's more than just a little project, then it might be its own objective. You can see why you'll have to decide that depending upon what shape it's in and what kind of permits you might need and how, do you need 3 different contractors, heating, plumbing, or just painting or whatever it is. Does everyone understand why, really how much work and how complex it is? Tells you whether it's a task under an objective or whether it's big enough to have an objective, because you want the funders to understand that you know what it takes, that you have very specifically thought out what it takes to do these. And also you want to hold yourself accountable to having thought that through. So you don't want to have a task. So under this, provide 2 safe, sober residences, you wouldn't have a task that just says rehab residents for for the people who are going to come. I don't know, whatever that word is, because unless it's just really small, if you just need to, paint and do minor repairs, then that would be a task. You can all see the difference, right? If there's some plumbing, if there's walls that have to be changed, if you have to build an office, that's a big deal. Okay, next. One-to-one recovery coaching that addresses necessary life skills, employment, permanent housing, and education, as well as group supports that contribute to ongoing sobriety, not surviving, sobriety, and improve social and emotional well-being. So what do we think of this, everybody? What do we say? Responses, is this good? Connie, I see thumbs up. Any comments on this? If you were the
It's really
reviewer,
well
what would
written.
you think? Well, I'll tell you what I think, because I'm a reviewer. These folks went back and added a bunch of stuff, and I think it's much stronger than it was. Because it now really includes the kind of things that we think about. And that's like, you have to figure that kind of regular people are on your review committee. They know what you know. And we know that things like addressing employment, permanent housing, and education. In addition, they already had ongoing sobriety and improved social and emotional well-being, which we also know are important. But we want to see that there are practical life skills here. So I think that this really strengthens it. Now, I want to say there's a danger here. That danger is that you have put enough in that, you know, you're going to be accountable for an awful lot here. So when you say, you know, employment, permanent housing, and education, you have to be prepared to actually address all of these. And so, you know, you're going to have to show in the grant that you have the expertise or have brought in the expertise to make sure that not only are these being taught, but that you're going to have some outcomes tied to them, that when folks leave, that they are able to use what they've gained to improve their employment, their housing, and their education. So you do have to be careful here. And it may be that you want to say, you may want to just say like basic life skills to sort of let yourself off the hook a little so that you don't have to address all three of these, or it might just say basic life skills and, you know, financial well-being or financial literacy. I'm just saying that, you know, every time you say something here that impresses us and says, wow, that's great, you're also holding yourself to having to do that. So even though I pushed you to add these things, I want to say that you also have to, you know, make sure you don't overpromise. Does anyone from the group want to say how you're feeling about adding these? Are you comfortable with this as that you can hold yourself to these?
Yeah, I think knowing what we already report on and what the recovery coaches are trained in, it makes sense. We had those things kind of originally in that third part as referrals, but I don't think it was clear that referrals are really ongoing throughout the recovery coaching process, and they're really creating a plan. So it wasn't adding more commitments, it was just.
I understand. And I think the rewrite is really good. So what you're saying is the referrals look to the casual reader, me, as what you meant was after they're done, you'll refer them to aftercare help. But what you're saying is, you know, provide one-to-one recovery coaching so the recovery coaching is going to address those. And you're saying that these are all part of the recovery coaching.
Yeah, right.
Okay, that's great. All right. Number 3, what do we think about this, everybody?
Take the W out of holistic.
Well, that's, I always go back and forth on that. You know,
Do
there's the
really?
British way and the
Both? Okay.
American way. But yeah,
Mhm.
you could do it, especially if you needed more space.
But the reintegration is a whole separate thing. It's like, yeah, again, I think that's really well written.
To me, I think reintegrate is a very strong verb here. Because I remember that's kind of what you talked about from the beginning, was that, you know, why are you doing this? Because these folks are shunned by the community. They're not, you know, they've had lots of trouble in the past. They've had all kinds of difficulties. And so you're intentionally providing the kind of help and supports that is going to help them reintegrate as healthy, productive members. That's great. Okay, that's good. And then number 4. Institute a community outreach program that builds awareness for the need for recovery housing and the positive impacts it has within the community. This is almost similar to whoever it was who had the great suggestion about strengthening the last one by looking beyond what we're doing right now today to make it sustainable. That's exactly what's happening here.
Right.
And you can see how that makes us feel good about it. That yes, it's a 1-year grant, but well, let's say it's a 1-year grant, but they're really thinking about how are we going to expand. That's great. So
I saw
what do
that
people
and I
think
thought it
about
was
this?
brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah. This is very strong. I mean, what you did in 30 minutes is pretty darn impressive. I think it's great. Okay. I wish we had time to do it for everybody, but again, this is learning, and I think that you'll be able to apply it to the other ones. And of course, you're all welcome to go home and practice on your objectives for the other two, the other two projects. So what we're going to do now, oh, and if you'd like to, the other two projects, I'm thinking ahead. That's good. I'm learning. If you would send me the draft objectives for the other two projects, if someone from your group will please send them to me, maybe the person who is going, anyway, somebody who's written them down, then I'll plop them in here, and then I'll send that next time. I'll send everybody's objectives.
I did put them into the chat box from group 3.
Oh, that's great. Okay, well, I will, okay, I'll save that and won't close out, so I won't use our time now, but I'll put them in. Okay, that's great. Okay. Let's talk about activities. Okay, or any more questions about objectives? I'm just going back to this example. Any more questions before we move on? All right. Nice work, everybody. So, tasks. Here's an example from Hope House. And I talked about that objective 1, in this case, is providing the safe, sober residence. So go ahead and read this and see what it is we're doing. We already had the space. We had the building. So what we did is we had a task around refurbishing and equipping the space. And as you can see, putting this in a table really strengthens it. I want to warn you that you often won't be able to do this. I'm sorry to say. So even though I'm showing this in this beautiful table, I'm going to show you another way to do it too. This is how I used to be able to always do it in the old days, but now we're not in the old days. And what often happens now is you have a space where you can describe your tasks or activities, and you have a certain number of either words or what are they called? The little words, or, a period letter. Anyway, whatever they're called.
Characters.
Yeah, characters. I'm sorry, characters. I just lost that for a minute. And I'm telling you, the first time I did this, like 3 or 4 years ago, I hadn't done grants for a long time. And I made these beautiful tables and I plopped them in. And guess what? All the formatting disappeared. And I had a big mess of words. And thank God I had left myself enough time, because it took me like 3 hours to redo them. So don't think that unless it allows you to create tables, as beautiful as they are, you're not going to be able to do it. unless, you know, it allows you to. So some places actually ask for tables, and that's wonderful. And I think that it really is important, even if you're not allowed to do it for yourself as a planning tool is very, very helpful, because it really helps you build out, what are we going to do when we first get the money? What are we going to do? How long is it going to take us to be ready to open our doors? So that you've really thought through this. And so, you know, we know that it's going to take 3 to 4 months before we're actually ready to place our first folks. And then you go on and you have, you know, ideally a table for each one of these. And then again, I will show you how to do it if you can't have a table. But let's look through what we're doing. We're refurbishing and equipping the space. We're preparing, staffing, and plan the daily schedule. We're hiring, we have milestones. So this communicates to the funder that we really have thought through what that means when we say refurbish and equip space. And if I'm not able to do it in a table, I really hope that there's space in a narrative so that I can explain what I mean, because you want to show that you've really thought this through, and that once they give you the money, you are going to do what it takes to carry out your project task by task in a way that makes sense and that each one builds on the other. So how do we, you know, here's our milestones. Here's who does it. Here's when we do it. Here's who does it. And here's our space ready for occupants. I want to say something about key staff here. I can't tell you how many grants I see when they say all. No, it's not all. If you have more than 2 staff in the whole project, then some staff are going to have greater responsibility for certain tasks than others. And you want to show that. And that doesn't mean that everybody doesn't pitch in and help, but you want to show that you have that you've assigned key responsibilities, so that there are people who are basically heading up something, and it might be 2 people, it might be 3 at the very most. So the staff are hired and trained, the schedule is finalized, and now we're going to recruit and place our first residents. So that's a typical first kind of objective, the task for a first objective for something where you're building something new. And now I'm going to show you what to do if you don't have a schedule of activities. I mean, I'm sorry, if you don't have the ability to use tables. This is a very typical way that you might lay out a schedule of activities. In many cases, a project, a request for proposal might just say, tell us how you're going to, you know, tell us your project plan, show your project plan. And again, if you can't do a table, then this is a way to do it. So what did I do here? I actually took that table that I couldn't use, and I pretty much put everything except for the, when we go back here, I wasn't able to do the milestones, but you can see that I was very concrete and very specific in what we accomplished. So it's almost like including milestones. So go ahead and read these. So in this case, we were building a new Head Start classroom. And I want to tell you, I'm going to take you back. This was some years ago. And this was a case, it was a federal grant administered through the state. And there were going to be 3 new Head Start. There was money for 3 new Head Start classrooms in the state of Vermont. And we just kind of figured that all 12 Head Start programs would apply. So everybody was already operating Head Start programs. They were already doing them according to all kinds of federal guidelines. And so you would think that you could just say, well, we're just going to add another classroom. We're already doing this work. We know how to do it. Give us the money. We knew that this was going to be a very competitive grant, that again, there were going to be 3 funded and that 12 were going to apply. And so what we wanted to do is, rather than just have the feds or the reviewers presume that we already knew what we were doing because we've done it before. We went ahead and broke it into, made sure that we showed that we had thought out what goes into this, rather than just saying we've done this before. So I think that this really gave us a competitive advantage. Because I was the ghost grant writer, I didn't know what goes into Head Start programming or building a classroom or creating the program. So I had to go to the staff and have them tell me very specifically what it is that they do. And then I built this schedule around it. So we were very specific and concrete, and we were able to tell the funders that we knew what we were doing and we knew how we were going to get there. So let's see. I didn't give you the whole year, but you can see almost, for every month we did something. I had, go ahead and read this. I wrote out what would be done. And this is a case also where, because we couldn't do it in a table, I used formatting as well as I could to make things stand out. So when you're doing something like this, you really want to use bold and underlining and italics to make it easy on the eyes, to make it easier to read. And so that's what I intentionally did. And you can see again that we got very specific here. Recruit families. Instead of just saying recruit families, which would have been easy enough to do, I pushed my contact and I said, well, what does that mean? What do you do? And it turns out, who knew that they carried out door-to-door recruitment? I didn't know that, but we went through every step of it. So we got very specific, and you can see that this makes for a much stronger project. So now we have a little time. So let's go back to our Sunlight City Park Enhancement Project. And let's just spend a little time talking about that. Remove woody invasive plants from wetlands, stream banks, and floodplains. That's our objective. You know as much as I do about what this would take, but I think that even without knowing that much, we can come up with some activities. So let's just spend the next 10 minutes or so. But first, I'm going to have you all spend 5 minutes on your own and write down what you think would be some tasks under this objective. And I'm going to tell you that you can use volunteers, you can use paid staff. You can do it one time, you can do it several times, you can get very creative with this. But spend, I'm going to give you, actually, I think really we don't even, okay, I'll give you a little less than 5 minutes, about 4 minutes, and everybody write down what you think might be 3 tasks under this first objective. I'll do it too. Go. Okay, I'm gonna give you one more minute. Okay, everybody. Pencils up. So what the heck would we do? What would you start with? Remove woody invasive plants from wetlands, stream banks, and floodplains. This is in a park. You know what, Nick? I'm going to ask if someone else, you have been a fantastic contributor. I want to see if there's someone else who will speak up first. Anybody else?
I was gonna say, how about assemble the necessary tools and safety workwear? I was thinking such as wet boots or hip waders for a crew of volunteer environmentalists.
For a crew of volunteer environmentalists. Great. Okay, that's one possible task. Okay, Nick.
You have to determine what the invasive species are first before you start ripping stuff out.
And you could
Yes.
train
Well,
your
someone needs to,
volunteers.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is someone you need to go out and find someone who can train your volunteers.
Okay, yes. So I agree. What I put was, yes, train the volunteers. I think we can assume that we have somebody who's written the grant who knows what the woody invasive plants are.
Okay, I would disagree with that, but okay.
All right, so you're saying it's possible.
It's essential. You have to have someone who knows the
Yeah.
ecology, biology, and environmental impact of all the various plants and growths that are in the
Yeah.
area.
Okay, that's certainly a possibility. It's certainly a possibility.
And I just want to say, and training the volunteers to do that, and also training them how to do it properly, so they get them by the roots and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so Nick, what you're saying, which makes sense, and yes, it just depends upon the grant, but you're saying identify the experts, and they have to be experts who not only understand that, but can provide good training so that folks who aren't experts can understand it, right?
Well, but someone has to go in and identify, and if you start ripping out plants, destroy the bug and bacteria life, you're going to destroy the whole area. You're going to destroy the ecological balance in the area. Yes, there are invasive species, but you can't just willy-nilly go through and start ripping stuff out unless you just want to go bulldoze the whole thing and start from scratch.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. So you're going to identify the expert who's actually going to kind of show whoever's doing it what the plan is, what's going to be removed, what's going to stay, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, great. These are all excellent. Somebody said training the volunteers, right? I think somebody said that. So
I said that, but I also think really how to gather volunteers, if that's with, brochures or posters, contacting local conservancies, kids that need community service for school. I think gathering them and setting up a time to meet is also one of the first.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can see this is exactly the kind of brainstorming we do to come up with, when we want to figure out how we're going to meet our objective. We throw out a bunch of possible tasks, and these are all things that we're going to now build into 3 to 5 tasks. So far we have, I'm going to call that marketing or recruiting volunteers. And that includes both, materials and identifying places or, kind of identifying likely, I don't know, likely suspects. That's not how we'll say it, but, likely populations who might, a gardening club, a school, a youth group, as you said. Somebody else said training them. It was an excellent idea. You're going to have the necessary tools. And you can see how even we can do this. We're not experts in this, but we understand what it takes. And so like leaving out something like having the necessary materials, you could have volunteers, they all show up in sneakers and without gloves, and you have a disaster. So yes, you also need to match the volunteers to the tools. So if you only have 3 of whatever it takes to remove these invasive plants, if it's some special kind of hoe, then you don't want 20 volunteers. What else?
How about a replacement of containment receptacle so you prevent spreading the invasive plant?
What is that? Can you say that again? You might be beyond my knowledge here.
Placement of a containment receptacle for the.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Make sure that you have a really safe, well planned
Don't
out
end up
place so that people
spreading it.
don't just throw them into the woods and then next spring they've come back again. That's a really good point. Excellent. Yeah. Anything else? So I suggested also that we, where did I write it? That as part of that removing, I said document the work so that, you can show that you really made a difference. So whether it be weighing it or taking photos or showing, we were going to clear out this many acres each time. And this time, let's say, I'm just making this up. Let's say we were going to do half an acre the first time, but it ends up being a really a day of very pouring rain, terrible weather, and you still have some trusty volunteers who show up. But, so you're documenting it, and you can show that it just wasn't as much a success because it wasn't the fault of that you had bad volunteers or a bad process. It was really bad weather. Or it may be that you document it and it turns out that they're in one area, the invasive species are much thicker and harder to get out than someplace else. So you want to document that so that you can show, what it is, why it is that you don't always have the same result each time. Another piece that I wonder if you might want to include, and it goes a little beyond this, but I actually added as a possibility to recognize and celebrate the success. So that in addition to recruiting and using the volunteer and scheduling the volunteers and training the volunteers and using them, you also build in something afterwards so that maybe, when it's all done, you're going to have a picnic with all the volunteers and, show everybody the pictures of how great it was and have the mayor come and thank everybody. Does that also make sense to folks? I often like to include a celebration because it's inexpensive. We can do it very inexpensively. You can do it usually for $100 or less. And it seems to really capture the attention of the reviewers. And it also ends up being a really good idea. People really like it. And it's just something that I found that when I include it, it really is a great addition. So now we've thought up all of these different possible tasks. And the next step, of course, would be deciding which comes first. And It's, and who wants to say what comes first here? Presuming that we're using volunteers, how would you order these?
You saying which would you do first? The
Yeah,
volunteers or the equipment or what?
well, the volunteers, the equipment, identifying the expert that Nick talked about. What would we, because that's another really important part of this, is we have our objectives. We have our objective, and now we want to show that the tasks really make sense and that we're, each one kind of builds on the other, or
So,
yeah, that they make, that they.
so the
we make
volunteers would
right.
be first. Getting the recruits would be first.
So one way to do it is to identify volunteers
Would
first.
getting the expert be first, so then you know exactly what goes into it and how much or how many volunteers you would need?
So
I think that makes
again,
a
I
lot
was
of
assuming
sense.
that okay, I was assuming that the project person was the person that wrote this grant because they know that they're an expert in this.
I was too, but Nick made a very good point that it could have been the head of the Parks Department, and that now they might need to engage an expert. So it really depends upon the project. So it may need, but I agree that if you do need to get the expert, then that probably goes first. And then, you might, and then you want to talk about, how much time, and you do want to give yourself enough time. You don't want to get to month 4 and say, oh, we should have already had the first, our first volunteer, work crew out, when actually it may, if you really do need the expert, it may take a month to get the expert, and you may need to borrow or beg tools. That may take another month. Marketing, it may take another month. So you might, month 4 probably does make sense to have the first one. And you don't want to say that, within 5 or 6 weeks, we're going to do this unless you already have a crew. So it really depends upon what is needed, what you already have in place. If you already have, so let me step back and say, let's say that this is a Parks Department that already has a very excited group of volunteers who is willing, ready, and able to do something. Well, that really directs how you build your tasks. So I just want to explain that in each case, you need to make the case to your funder that the tasks that you're writing make a lot of sense. If you already have a big activated group of volunteers, then you don't even need to have a task. You can say, inform volunteers and schedule the events. And that can come, right after the expert. Or as someone said, if the expert's already on board, then you don't need to have that as a task. What do people think about having a celebration for something like this? Is that something that is worth doing, or do you think it seems like kind of a little too much? Or would you wait and have a celebration at the end of the whole project?
I think, to me, it sounds like a great idea, and especially a lot of our funders love to see these kind of things because they'll be acknowledged at them.
Right. Yeah. To me, I think having celebrations, especially when you bring in VIPs who now see how important your work is, get to know your organization better, and also get some free publicity out of it. I do think that that really helps, and that it, it increases your visibility and the likelihood that you're going to get funded again. And I think you have to keep it simple, though. Don't, unless, like in Deb's case, you're going to decide, is your celebration a task or an objective? If it's a task, don't overdo it. Don't, spend hours and many hours and a lot of money and blood, sweat, and tears on this. People are very happy to come together for a picnic and some ribbons and, a few photographs. And then, you let the press know and that sort of thing. So I do think that's, yes, Nick.
I would almost make the celebration preliminary to the second objective, in the sense of plan a picnic after everything's been cleared, and then you can have the mayor or the head donor, dig a hole and plant the first native plant back in the area that you cleared, and then you have a couple-hour picnic and hire some local Zydeco band to play a little music, and then you've gotten some extra volunteers who showed up for the picnic.
I think that's a really good point. And then you can really show folks, what we already accomplished. And now we're going to take this next step and make it beautiful and make it
Right.
very beautiful. That's excellent.
You might get some people who are just in love with gardening who go, I didn't want to clear the thing out, but I love planting plants. And,
So yeah, I'm using this time to really push that. I find that adding a celebration or some kind of recognition, I almost always find that is a real plus. It's great. And it doesn't have to be at the very end of your project. Anybody else comments on this? I just wanted us to work together, and this is exactly how we build these projects. We have this brainstorming. Okay, we know we're going to do this. What do we have on hand? What do we need? How are we going to organize it? What are we going to do first? And then we start talking about how many weeks is it going to take? And how will we know we've accomplished it? What are we missing here? And, as someone pointed out, I thought about tools. I didn't even think about the boots that you might need. So as you plan, you really, you put it on paper. And then when you go away and come back, you'll see, oh, we also need this. We need clippers, or, here's some things that I think the little kids can do, but here's some kind of dangerous things, or there might be poisons. And I thought that was a brilliant idea. Whoever suggested we need to make sure that we're not just, when we get there and we're digging this all out, that we have a really safe place to put everything, and that we don't have to everybody doesn't have to carry all their stuff for a quarter of a mile to dispose of it. I mean, that's a really interesting problem that I don't even know the answer to. There must be some experts who know, what do you do with this stuff? That was, certainly don't want to throw it into the river. So these are all things that help us build this. And this is where, even though I'm the main writer, I go to the program people and I say, tell me what's involved. I don't want, again, a whole group writing it, but I definitely want the brain power of the experts and the people on the ground, so that I can make it real, so that the readers know that we have thought this through, that we understand how it's going to work. And I'm very impressed with what you've done in this just short time. You can see that we could build this grant together. And I also think it was really excellent progress on those two projects that you have that we're working on. So basically, yeah, this is how we do it. And we're at 4:59, so we have time for a question or two or a comment. And then we'll be back next week. And that's when we're going to talk about how do you find all the great data and information to really buttress your proposal, which I love doing. And I hope everybody has a laptop, because you'll be using them. Okay, everybody, any questions? All right.
Thank you, Ann.
Bye. I'm not going to
Thank
close it
you
off
so
yet.
much.
Thank you.
Very good. Fun as always. I love this stuff. All right.
Don't forget to save chat.
Yes, I'm going to the chat right now. Thanks.
Thank you for making this fun.
Yeah, great. Bye, everyone. Have a good meeting tonight, Nick.